Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Bartell, and I'm a solutions engineer with Tableau. And this is one of our series of webinars on Tableau products. And in this particular one, we're going to be focusing in on Tableau Desktop. And it's really, I guess you could say, focused for the business end user. Many of our tools are really focused for the business end user to enable them to gain insights into the questions and areas and problems that they're trying to resolve, rather than having to rely on people to develop them for them. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're going through this. Just quick intros for the people that are on our team. I'll really be doing all the presentations today, but and just by way of background, I have been with Tableau about 4 years. I have been working with DIT about 4 years, and my background's in business analytics and all things technical. Have worked in state and local government primarily for past 20, 25 years, up and down the East Coast. Have also worked for a number of other BI vendors, so I have a pretty good perspective on the market as far as what the tools can do and all that fun stuff. So the other part of our team, Henry is the account exec. He may or may not be on the call today. Jason Blanco is also an important part of the team. He is new to the team. He is following in the footsteps of Catherine Skinner on the customer success side. So again, he may or may not be joining today, but he's somebody that you'll be seeing a lot of in terms of enablement on our products. And again, this product is already in your environment there, and is there for you to use in your agencies. There, and I'll kind of leave it at that for now. So jumping into the agenda for today, really it's going to focus in on first a quick overview of Tableau solutions. So we have a very abbreviated solution set. It's pretty straightforward, so just kind of a quick review of that, and then we'll spend the rest of the time jumping into a demo of Tableau Desktop. If you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I will glance over at the chat window and see if there's something that can be answered, and if not, we'll take it offline or at the end or whatnot. Okay, so just a quick overview of the Tableau platform. And actually, let me do one thing here. I always forget to do this. Let me put my pointer on so that we can. Let me just get this out of the way. There we go. So that we can kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Put this in the presentation. Okay. So again, it all starts with data, right? We can't do our analysis if we don't have data, and that data can exist on our laptops, can exist in databases, can exist in the cloud, it can exist in applications, but that's really the source of what we need to do our analytics and gain our insights. And before we can get those insights, we really need to focus on this task of cleansing the data. It's probably pretty rare that you can just literally open up a file, it has everything you need, and boom, you're way to go. So usually we have to move through this step of cleansing the data, preparing it, adding additional data sources, appending, joining, unioning, cleansing, grouping, aggregating, pivoting, all those fun things. And then we can use a tool like Tableau to do the analysis and gain our insights. And then really the other major part of the platform is Tableau Server and Tableau Online. You guys have Tableau Server installed on-prem at DIT. There is another version of it that's hosted by Tableau called Tableau Online. Just know that that's part of our solution, and that's, again, a hosted model where we actually manage the servers. And then your users will interact with and collaborate on this content via either a mobile app or browser, or will embed it into applications or portals or whatever your environment is. So hopefully that makes sense. I've got a couple quick slides to kind of run over that. Again, we'll get into the demo here pretty quick, but Prep Builder is something you really should take advantage of. What it allows you to do is that whole data preparation process. So there are many times where you have to pull together many different data sources. They might be at different aggregation levels. You might need to remove and filter certain rows. You might need to clean things, get punctuation out. You might need to, group and all that fun stuff. And it's kind of a process that involves multiple steps, right? So you create these flows, and then the output would be this data set at the end that you can then use with Tableau. There's lots of other data source things it can do. We do a separate demonstration on Tableau Prep Builder, so look for that one coming up probably in the next month or two. Desktop. So again, we'll get into this. I'm really not going to spend much time on this slide. We'll be spending a lot on it. And then Tableau Server, Tableau Online. And you see that, it's a permissioned, secure, governed environment that is managed at DIT that allows you to, again, publish your content into, manage, and share with others in your environment. I won't spend time on this slide, but I will just kind of mention it. There are different user types. So really, your people that do the bulk of content creation and are interacting with Tableau on a daily basis to create content would be either creators or explorers. The only major difference with a creator is that you get Tableau Prep free of charge with the product. Okay, and again, it is a desktop-oriented product. Explorer has many capabilities of the desktop product in a web-based solution. However, the one thing you cannot do with an Explorer license is publish data, right? You cannot upload a data source. You can create a workbook on the web from an existing data source, but you cannot upload it and create a data source. And then that'll make a little bit more sense in a little while. A viewer is primarily a person that just consumes. They're going to be able to interact, filter, but they don't design, they don't alter, they don't edit, any of that stuff. So these are the three major roles. If you have questions on them, they're all available to you within your environment. And okay, let's jump into it. So let the example that I've been doing here for the past seminars is something that I like doing. It's not oriented specifically to government, but it's, I think, an example that you can relate to regardless of which agency you're in, whether you're in DHHS or you're in public safety or finance or budget or revenue. You can kind of work through an example, and I'll try to do this as we go through, because my point isn't to show you data that's health related. It's to show you how the product works and how you can gain insights, which I think is really the most valuable thing that the product can do. And that's, again, if I could highlight one significant thing that you could keep in mind throughout this whole thing is the purpose of this is to enable you as the end user to answer your questions and gain insights without having to pick up the phone and email and sanction somebody else to do it for you, right? That's the whole point. So, all right, it all starts with data. Here are the different data sources we can connect to. There's kind of two groupings. One would be a file-based data source, meaning local file, Excel, CSV, Access, PDF, Spatial. We'll talk a little bit about Spatial. Spatial means that I can connect to existing data types like a shapefile, like an Esri, something generated through Esri or other GIS tools that create this spatial file. Our product has a lot of the geospatial capabilities built right into it, so you don't have to have a third-party GIS tool. But recognizing full well that GIS tools like an Esri are great at what they do. They're for creating GIS-based applications, right? What we're good at is taking that data out of a spatial application and combining it with analytic data to do analysis. Right? There's two different things, and if anybody's unclear kind of on the difference, I can try to give you more of an example. Statistical files. So if you're, say, an epidemiologist and you're living in R or SAS or SPSS or those sorts of things, Tableau, what Tableau is good at is taking the results of those models that you're creating, leveraging, say, an R model where you calculate some specific, I don't know, very specific model result, and you want to incorporate that into your visualization. So we're not a statistical product per se. We do have some statistical based capabilities, more geared towards a casual end user, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Again, so we pretty much cover the bases, and then you have all of your typical type file sources here. These are everything from Microsoft SQL Server to oh, you name it. I mean, these are all some application based, all the way down to some connectors that are provided by third parties. So, if we're in the business of connecting to data, so chances are you're going to find one that's going to connect to. And again, in your environment, you're primarily using things like Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server to do that. Okay, so today's example, again, we're gonna keep pretty simple. We're gonna use a text file to connect to, and I am just going to get to my file, drill down, and get to my file where I can find it here. And okay, so the example today that we're going to be using is around home listings. So this would be from a realtor website where I'm pulling down all the listings because the premise is I want to move to an area and I'm interested in a lot of different metrics about the area, like, okay, what is the average price by zip code, or what is the average square footage or dollar per square foot, for a particular area, or how close is it to my nearest high school or hospital or park, or, those sorts of things, right? Which, if you can kind of parlay into your world, if you have constituents, which you do, think of them as the kind of the homes for sale here, right? And then think of things like proximity to the nearest servicing center if you're the DMV, or things like that. So these are all the things I think you can kind of parlay by using this data source. So once I bring in that data source, and I'm just going to hop over here because I've already really kind of brought this in, you're going to see a view of your data in a kind of a profiled view. You see it here. So we see the different columns of data that were brought in. And then first off, you're going to see that each column has a type. So this is a string type field. This is a date type field. This is a geography type field. So we actually do some searching through your data to determine what the data types are most kind of aligned with. Are they always correct? No, you can always come in and you can always change it. So if something doesn't need to be a string, you could make it, whatever, a date and time, a numeric, and then just for this one over here, for example, remember I said the product actually uses or has built into it a lot of different knowledge of different geoclassifications. So airport codes, area codes, CBSAs, MSAs, city, even congressional districts, state and province, zip code. So we will recognize that without you having to bring in a spatial shapefile that, say, recognizes all the counties within North Carolina, all the census tracts. If you have the FIPS code, you can do it by census tract, and all that kind of stuff. So, all right. You see across the data set here, we've got, these are all the listings. Here's the addresses, the year built, the days on market, square footage. There's lots of good data here that we're going to be able to leverage as we start analyzing. And our premise is going to be kind of, where do we want to live? I mean, what can we afford? Where do we want to live? Is it closest to certain hospitals or high schools? If we've got, high school age kids, do we need to get them closest to the nearest schools? That sort of thing. So that's what our analysis is going to be about. One other thing I'll point out before we jump into the real meat of it is this connection type. You see, I can connect either live to my data or I can connect via an extract. And the live connection is just that. It allows me to always connect whenever I'm doing anything. Any question I have, it's going to submit a query back to my data source. An extract, however, builds an in-memory copy of it so that, and there's two parts to this. One is it's very fast. So because it's in memory, it can handle a large number of rows and it can do a lot of very quick calculations. So it's faster than live connections, but it also has the benefit of offloading from a live data source. So in this case, I'm using something local, so it really doesn't matter. But if I were connecting to a production database, your people are probably not going to want you to connect, live to a production data source. So you create an extract, and that extract then could be published to Tableau's server and be used as a certified kind of curated data set. And that's really kind of the benefit of this extract function. We're not going to be tackling that today, but just understand that an extract is really the key to leveraging this first part of this data analysis process, which is, getting our data. And yes, I can go ahead and I can add other data sources to this and do joins. I'm not going to do that today, just in the interest of time, but you could join and union and do all the stuff that you want to here. Tableau Prep does a much better, more thorough job of it. All right, with that in mind, let's kind of jump to our first insight. So you're going to see me create a number of what I'll call visualizations. We call them vizzes throughout this process. And then eventually I'm going to tie them together. But that's kind of, to my mind, that's the least important part of it. Right now, I'm answering a question, like where are all the listings located in my area? Now, I live in Tampa, so I focused on the Tampa area. Yeah, so first thing is this is the interface that you use with Tableau. This is based on a concept that the developers originally of Tableau created because they were frustrated with other business intelligence tools that forced them into certain ways they had to graph and show data, right? Most tools will force you to pick a chart type and then do your analysis. And then you end up parameterizing a chart type. Well, what if the chart type you pick is not the best suited for showing your data? So they wanted an easier way to go about analyzing data. And it's called a concept called VizQL. Based on whatever my visualization is, we're going to create the visualizations query based on that. Here are the data points that are part of my data source on the left-hand side. I'm going to use them to drag them into this workspace here, either on a shelf up top, like this columns and rows shelf, or this visualization space where you see your drop field here or drop field here. And then this thing called a marks card, which I'll get to in a second, but that's kind of the if I had to say configuration or parameterization of the things I'm going to be putting into my visualization over here. Okay, they're broken down into two categories of data. You see here, I've got these things that look like pills because they're shaped, as pills. Dimensional pills are on top and they're in blue or light blue color. Measure-based pills are in green because they're numeric or measure-based. So things that I would want to aggregate, like say, I want to know the average listing price. So I could average, mean, max, those type of calculations, or what is the average number of baths by property type or by location or by city, right? So that's how I use these. And then I just simply drag and manipulate these pills to make my visualization show me the answer that I'm looking for. And you'll see that I can do it pretty quickly. Like, for example, the first thing we're going to ask is where are they located? So I want to know what the breakdown is by zip code. So I'm simply just going to take zip code and drag it out into the middle here. And you'll see it's going to create for me a map. Now, you saw I didn't have to pick any sort of a map widget. It just knew that this was geographic based data. Let's talk about this map a little bit. So each dot represents the zip code that I'm looking at or that I have data for, right? Now, I'll show you the different ways we could show this stuff on the map. But the very first thing that I want to do is say, well, I'd like to know what the average price is by zip code. So if I take this price pill over here and I drag it on top of the color option of the marks card, and then I specify that I want the average price, it's going to build on top of that map the breakdown by zip code by average price. So that's as simple as it is to get to the data that I wanted to analyze, right? Again, so you could look at average age by county, average number of constituents by age demographic by FIPS code. These are all the types of things that you could do in your world with your data. And then I could further tailor this via the marks card over here by saying, like, every mark, by the way, is a drawn piece of your visualization, whether it be a bar or a polygon or a piece of text, and it has properties. So every mark here, which is on my map in this case, has color. So I could change the color if I wanted. I could change the label. So if I want to add the average price to the label, oops, I did that a little too quickly. I wanted to do a control drag over there. You see what I've now created are more aspects of my marks card. I have a color by price. I have a text value by price at the level of zip code. So this may answer my question right off the bat, which is fine, but let's talk now about the way, the cool things that I can do with a map. So again, I didn't have to go to any, third-party GIS product to do this. We just natively understand this out of the box. Now, if I wanted to tailor this map a little bit, make, I don't know, let's do it by street level views. So now, and let me go ahead and make my color a little bit lighter so you can see the street level views here in my map, right? So if I wanted to drill down into, these particular areas and look at the streets, I can do that. I might want a satellite level view. So I can have the map round be satellite. Now, the cool thing about satellite view is this map engine is incredibly fast and detailed. So as I'm drilling into the data, you see I'm literally able to get down to street level views of my data, which is going to be kind of cool. I'm going to show you in a minute how I can add that as part of my visualization. Let's get back out to our high level view here now. And I'm going to actually go back to the street level view because I think it makes a little bit more sense for what we're trying to do today. And I can overlay certain things on top of this too. I can also leverage custom maps in the background. If you have developed a map background that you want to bring in that's part of a mapping service or a WMS service, or maybe you have a weather map you want to bring in or something like that, right? You can do that by simply just importing it in and using it instead as a background. Okay, now, what if I wanted to know the breakdown of houses by price category, like different price points within each zip code? And I want to overlay that on my map. So let's create another visualization. I'm just going to create a whole new blank, sheet here. And I can start again fresh. So this time I'm going to ask for the count of listings. So again, I'm going to take that, I'm going to drag it over here, this time to drop field here. Now it created a bar for me this time, not a map. Why? Because all we have is the count of listings. So what better way is there to display the count of listings than in a bar, right? I could do this a couple different ways. I could make it a dot or I could make it a square or a shape, but for all practical purposes, a bar is probably the best way to do that. So you see that I've gotten in one simple drag of some information here, I get the total number of listings in the area for this time period. And this, by the way, this data is a little dated. If you looked at it now, it would probably be significantly different given the way that our market has changed, but don't concern yourself with that too much right now. Okay, we wanted to break this down further by price point. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create something called a price bin. So we're going to come down to price and we're going to say, we're going to use a little feature here that says create, and I could create a bunch of things. I'm going to create bins, so price bins from this. And I'm going to say, by default, it's saying 90,000 is probably a good band to use. I'm going to prefer to go with 50,000 because I think that's just something easier for us to consume. So we're going to create a new field on the fly called price bin. You see it now appears here as now a new pill. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the price bin. Now keep in mind, right now I have one row, that's this whole row, top to bottom, that is broken out by count. If I drag price bin to columns, what's it going to do? It's going to break out that count of listings by price bin. And you see at the bottom how these are all in 50K increments. So I've now created the breakdown by the price bin for each bar of listings. Now, from a visualization perspective, I have to turn my head like 90 degrees to be able to read this. So if I simply flipped these two, so I made price bin in rows and the count of listing in columns, or just simply swapping these axes, Now I get a horizontal kind of view. Well, all we did was flip the columns and rows. Now, this is going to become really important when you do other visualizations because everything is geared off of these rows and column shelves and a mark card. And that's the secret to Tableau. That's all you need to know about creating visualizations. You're really never going to see me creating things via a chart widget. That's just kind of counter to the analysis process, at least as kind of we see it from the Tableau perspective. All right, so I said that I wanted to incorporate this into my first map. So let's go back to the map. Now I have two worksheets, right? I've got the map and I've got this price bin thing. I'm going to come over to the marks card and I'm going to go to my tooltip option, click in it. Now, the tooltip has a little dialog which says, what do you want to put on your tooltip? Well, we've already got the zip code and the average price. Those are, by the way, those were added automatically for us because we already used them and it just assumed we'd want to put them into our tooltip. Now I can change that if I wanted. I could add any sort of text in here, but I'm going to accentuate this by inserting that sheet called the price bin tooltip. I could incorporate any one that I wanted, but I'm going to pick this one. Now, this is important to note right here, this sheet. So what it's saying is right on this tooltip, incorporate or put in the price bin tooltip in a window with a max width of 300 pixels by 300 pixels high and filter to any field that's relevant when I'm hovering over whatever element it is, or in this case, whatever zip code. So let's just watch what happens now. If I hover over this zip code right here, you'll see that the price bins show from 50 to, this is the count of listings by price bin. If I go to this one, however, you see that the price bins change. I have quite a few in a little bit higher ranges. If I move to this zip code, I've got a different breakdown. So again, if I'm looking for houses primarily in the 250 to 300K range, this is going to help me focus in on certain zip codes that I might, like this one right here, the bulk of the houses seem to be in the 250K range. So again, just put this into your world. You know, this might be a breakdown by age demographics, by ethnicity, you name it. I mean, you can put whatever you want in here. You'll see I'm going to even put a map in the tooltip in just a second. But it's a very quick and easy way for your end user to just do some analysis. And again, to me, this is very approachable. Yes, it can take maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours of reading, of using some preparatory videos on how to use Tableau, but you can get very proficient in doing things like this very quickly. And I'll talk about that towards the end. I'll mention what resources are available to do this. All right, before we jump into some other visualizations, I want to actually leverage I want to add an overview to this on the actual listing itself. So to do that, I have the latitude and longitude right here, you see, available, but I've also used this function here called location, and I'm going to edit this little formula that says make point to call out the fact that there's a number of spatial functions that we have built into the product, like make point, make line, distance, buffer, and a couple others. And they're used to be able to spatially enable the view on your visualization. So in this case, it's spatially enabling the latitude and longitude so that when I take this field, location as point, and I drag it into my view, now this time I get a little different. I get this thing say add a marks layer. Why? Because it knows it's a spatial type of an object. And it says, maybe you want to add this to another layer on your visualization. So you see those dots appear now. Those are my actual listing locations. Now, the only other thing I might want to do here is add the address to that, just so we have that. And I also might want to just tailor the color. I want to change the color to make them orange so they stand out. And I'm going to add a border around each one of those dots. So again, they stand out a little bit more. Okay, now if I hover over a dot, you'll see I see the actual address. And actually, maybe it would be helpful to show the price. So let's drag the price onto the tooltip as well. I'd like the average price. And now I see for every listing the address and the average price. And I could do whatever. I could put the MLS listing number. I could put, a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, one cool thing I'm going to do, and I'll kind of short circuit this one. I created another view called satellite view, and all it is a map view of the satellite view. But behind the scenes, I created what's called a buffer around each listing. So now what you can't see, because I've hidden it, are all of the listings with buffers around them of about 100 feet. And what that's going to do when I bring it into my map, and just kind of work with me here, on so you see now I've got two things on my map. I've got the point of each listing, and then I've got the zip and the postal code. Well, on this one, I would like to go to the tooltip, and I'm going to add to it that satellite map. And I think you can probably guess what's going to happen here is in this tooltip, it's going to filter down to this address within 100 feet. And it's going to show me when I hover over each dot, it's going to show me that satellite view zoomed in to the buffer of 100 feet. So very easy to do. And all I'm doing, this could be for crime location where you're showing as I hover over an individual point, I'm getting the actual location on a map, right? And now I see what that house is. So again, it gives me, okay, this is what it looks like. And if I really wanted to get fancy, I could do a Google view, a street level view, and pass it to Google Streets, the street level view of the map, and show a 360 view of the house. I mean, that would just take me a little bit longer to do, so I'm not going to do that in the demo today. But nonetheless, I think you're starting to see some of the power of having, how quickly I can do my analysis. And again, this could be as far as I wanted to take my analysis for today. I might want to just save it or publish it out and say, hey, Joe, or my team, for all of you that you have been trying to figure out how to do this, let me just make this map available to you. I could publish it up to the server and so on. But we're going to build out a few more of these visualizations. So the one other thing I'm going to do with this map, just to kind of show you capabilities, I just think mapping is so valuable in today's world. And I'm going to just copy this or duplicate this map. And the only change I'm going to make to this one is I'm going to change the map type for every one of these location points to be a density map. So now when you have hundreds of thousands of points, all you see is just a map full of points. So it's when let's say you're looking at the density of crime. Let's pretend that these were crimes that happened within the Tampa Bay area, right? I could now see, and I could change the color intensity to be more intense, right? So I see there's more listings in these two areas and in this area than there are over here, for example. But I don't want to see the individual dots. I just want to see kind of the overview in terms of density. So again, another really cool way to visualize your data. I've done this like with traffic accidents. You can see the more where you have issues with higher incidents of traffic accidents, or like I said, crime is a great way to show crime. All right, let's continue on. Let's just look at another aspect of our data here. And I'll also mention, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat. I'll take a glance over there. I'm kind of rocking and rolling here to get through all this. Let's just start fresh with a whole nother insight. We want to know, when was the structure built? So this revolves around two things. I need to know how many by time. There's a year built field and there's a listings count. So I'm going to kind of go back to this. When we started originally, I just took this and I dragged it here, and we had 1,100 listings. Well, now let's look by year. So I'm going to take year and I'm going to drag that to columns, because I want to have every year be shown. Now, one thing happened here that I want to point out. It moved from a bar to a line, right? You'll see over here that it now automatically changed the mark type to this one called a line. Now, why did it do that? Because time-based data, time series-based data makes more sense to show as a line. But since you have the ability and the control as you want to show the data, let's say you wanted to show it as circles. So again, that doesn't really represent the data as well, but you can do it if you want. I could make them squares. I could make it an area chart. I could make it, well, let's see here, shapes. Make them whatever shape you wanted. You can make little houses or something, right? So, but the point is, and I could make them bars, but again, I think the best way to represent this data is as a line. So you see here that the bulk of the houses were built in 2020. We've done a lot of home building here in the Tampa Bay area. So I might be interested only in homes built in the last 10 years, right? And I can use that as a filter later on when I'm putting together my dashboard. So that maybe I want to analyze all people born within a certain age range in my analysis of cases for Medicaid or something. Just again, this is how we use this tool day in and day out. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that for this one. This is pretty cut and dry. And I'm going to look at what is the count and average price by zip. So this is one where we're going to show kind of two different dimensions together on one visualization. And I'm going to build out from pretty much the same point we started. We're going to, once again, drag out our listings. Now this time I'm going to show them by zip code. So drag zip code to columns, and what would you expect to happen? Have a bunch of columns broken out and expand that out to the entire view. Now I'm going to do two quick things here to just make it a little more readable. One, I'm going to sort by the count by zip code. And I'm going to flip like I did the top to bottom. So now all we did is flip the columns and we sorted by the number available within each zip code. Right now, what I'd like to add to this is overlaying the average price. So then I can get kind of that sweet spot of where do I have the most amount of listings at the right price of what I'm looking for. So let's find price. So let's find our price. There we go. I'm going to drag it in here and I'm going to put it right next to the count of listings. I want to know the average price. Now it assumes already that we're going to put it by zip code because zip code is in the rows. And I'm now looking at the average price and the count of listings side by side as columns, right? Just like I have here. Now, the little secret here that you can do is you can overlay them by making this a dual axis chart. And this, for some strange reason, it automatically changes them to dots. So just to make things more readable, now I have two marks cards, right? I have one that's representing the count of listings. One is the average price. Let's go ahead and change the price size down a little bit. You see what happened? Now I can get a better picture of where I have a higher number and what the average price is. So in this zip code, I've got quite a few. Oh, wait, one other thing. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, no, that's right. You seeing as I hover over, I've got the average price is 400K and I've got 198 houses. Here I've got 197 and I've got an average price a little lower. So if I'm trying to stay maybe in the 250K range as far as an average price, it looks like I'm going to have to come down into this area right here, these two zip codes, right? Or if I pick 300K, I can kind of see that I've got more houses available, or I say getting the colors right here, the number of houses in a particular price range, right? So this is just another way that I can kind of represent my data in a way that makes the most sense for me as the analyst trying to do this. And of course, I could add in things around this if I wanted to have the count of listings. I could drag that in as the label, and I might just kind of tailor this a little further so that it's a little bit lower, because if I have some of these overlapping, and I could do the same thing for the average price and add that in line with my label, right? So you see, you kind of you have to worry about things overlapping. But anyway, this kind of gives you insights into, and hopefully you're thinking, wow, I could really use this to show, I don't know, where we have too many incidences of arson happening within a radius of X number of, you know, whatever it be, children or, um, yeah. So we're going to create one more visualization before we kind of pull these all together. And we're going to do one that shows, let's say, a comparison. I want to know, well, what am I getting by square foot, right? So comparing the average price by square footage, let's say that I want to find just that. I'm going to find my price. Now, I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to highlight the fields I'm looking for at the level of address. And I'm not really sure how to create kind of a scatter plot. Or moreover, I would like Tableau to kind of show me what is the best way to represent this. So I'm going to come up to this option called Show Me, and it will show you what the things you can and what it recommends for you to pick as visualization options, right? So again, it's different than the whole model, if you think about it, where you have to pick, like you're in Excel and then you have a bunch of data and you're like, oh, I need a line chart, or oh, I need a stack bar chart. Here, it's recommending to you. It's got some artificial intelligence built into it to say what is that best visualization. If I click this, what it does is it places those data points into the marks card and column and row shelf where it can build the proper type of visualization. So just to kind of break this down, you see that now I've got two axes representing the measures at the level of address. So it kind of makes sense, right? I've got this whole column at the level of price by this one by square footage. And the only difference I'm going to change the level of aggregation. I don't want the sum of price. I don't want the sum of square footage. I want the average. So I just had to change that based on what was done. Now you see each one here represents this one way out here, 2.2 million. That's probably a little out of my price range, but I could stay within, if I'm really looking for, well, one other thing to consider here, let's look at a trend line and bring in a trend line here. So this analytics tabs brings in some nice little features here that I can overlay onto my visualization without having to know how to calculate something like a trend line. Or an average line, or a median, or a reference, or a box plot, or a cluster. So for example, I could bring in a trend line, which is going to show me based on my data that anything below here is saying essentially that it's got a higher price with a lower average per square foot. So that tells me that's value, right? I'm actually the opposite. I'm going to pay a little more for less square footage, right? Over here, I'm getting better value, right? Because I'm getting a higher average square footage for a lower price. So maybe I want to stick in this particular area, right in here. And those are the houses I want to look at. Now I can use that as a filter to see where those are on the map. And that's kind of cool because it's going to show me a lot of different types of things, right? As I want to start slicing and dicing. And again, I could go ahead and I can get even more detail. I could say by property type. I want to color this map by property type, so that now you see something funky happen here. So it created a trend line for each property type. Well, that tells me something interesting here, right? For this particular property, for multifamilies, and some I don't have a whole lot of listings for, the slope of the line, right? The price goes up pretty substantially, whereas I'm, the average price per square foot is not, right? But here, as price goes up, the average square footage, is increasing at as a steeper rate, right? So again, if you want to stick with a particular home type, like if I wanted to stick with ranches only, there's only one. So, but let's say I wanted to focus in on townhomes, right? That's kind of the grouping of townhomes that I would look at. I'm going to get rid of each one of these lines because for my purposes right now, it's kind of too much data. But at least I can now see a grouping of homes that I want to focus in on by price. All right, so now we've created 4 or 5 visualizations. I'm going to tie them all together into a dashboard. Because now, again, kind of repeating and hammering home what I was talking about earlier, any one of these visuals could be, freestanding, and I could make them available to my end users simply by publishing this individual visualization up. But together, they're going to even provide more insights. So let's just start. I created another type of a tab here called a dashboard tab rather than a worksheet. And I'm simply going to start dragging in my visuals where I want them on my map. I'd like to then put this over here. Oh no, I don't want that one. I've already got that overlaid, remember, on top of my map, so I don't need that one. Maybe we want this to be over here on the right-hand side. And I'd like this map to be down below here. And what else do we have? Our average, oh, we've got our time when the house built. We could put that over here, right? Now I have kind of 4 different perspectives all on one screen. So now what I could do is I could say, for example, let's focus in on only when houses were built. Like I want to say, I only want houses that were built in the last 10 years. You see, now it filters down to those particular areas. Maybe I want houses that are, in a particular zip code area, right? That's good for the number of listings at the right price. So I'm going to stick with ones in, this, and this area, but I have to kind of use that as a filter. Now you see it's now kind of putting all those down into just these 3 zip code areas. And then finally, I want to stick with a average price per square footage in a particular, kind of price zone. So let's stick with only, these type of houses right here. Bingo. Now I've filtered down to see what I'm looking at and where we want to focus in on, right? So that's really the key point here is, I think you can see how one could create very, very impactful visualizations. And, this could be turned into a dashboard very quickly. Like I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get back to the high level view here. We can add a dashboard title. I could bold this kind of quickly, make it different font. Boom, I've got a dashboard, right? And then the final step here would really be to publish this dashboard out and make it available to my other users, which is the last step that I'll do here, which is I'll say server, publish workbook. And now I'm publishing this out to that instance of Tableau server. And I will just do a quick name for this so that we have others in our, let's see, I can say NC webinar. And I need to tell it certain things like where I want to put it, which project. So now there's data, there's structure to this environment where we have permissioning and we have security, right? So certain people can see certain folders and certain people can see certain levels of data. If this were, HIPAA-based data, right, or personal information, we obviously wouldn't want to show that, so we need to worry about security. That's kind of a whole nother topic. We certainly cover that, but for now, let's put it into the sandbox area. And then as far as permissions go, here's where I can add in all my permissions that I would want to have. I can do it by groups. I got a leadership, I have Brian's group, leadership, power analysis, blah, blah, blah. Or I could go down to the individual person level and I can specify what they can and can't do with this content. So we have this concept with Tableau that you're a content owner. In other words, if you created it, you're the owner. And when you publish it, then you can determine what people in your organization can see and not see on this dashboard. This is also intertwined with your role, as we talked about at the beginning, whether you're a creator, an explorer, or a viewer, because obviously if you tell somebody that's a viewer that they have the ability to edit it, well, they're not going to see that edit button because they are limited, kind of thresholded to the level of their role in the system. But suffice to say, you can tailor this however you want. So once we have things the way we want, the last thing I'd want to say is, do you want all of the visualizations to be published, or do you want just the dashboards? So in our case, I'm just going to have the real estate listing analysis for this. That's the only thing I want to publish. And then I click the publish button. Now, once I publish it, you're going to see a web browser window open. And oddly enough, it's telling me that it can't connect. Hold on, let me. Might have to try logging in separately. Something happened to my internet. No, here it is. Okay, so let's. All right, so I had to kind of get back to my view. So this is what it would look like when you brought up that visualization. Looks very similar. This is a little dated copy that I had, but you can see it's all the same things. There's our density map view. Here's our first view that we had. Again, if we want to focus in on a particular zip code, we could click into the map, and we're just going to see that zip code, and so on. So suffice to say, this is kind of the next view that we would see as a person using this as a consumer of the dashboard. And then there's a whole host of things that I can do around this. Like I can do things like schedule, I can edit, I can view, I can set up views. Like for example, if I wanted to show the name of this view and save a custom view, a filtered view, like let's say, for example, I wanted to just see these top, it's gonna take a second to refresh. Kind of slow internet this morning. And I wanted to save this view as my personal view. And I could save that, and it will then allow me to have different views of my data that I can always go back to, or I could send to somebody. And I could say, hey, Joe, would you check out this view, and have those sorts of things. There's other options. There's an edit option. So there is the ability to go ahead and go into an edit mode with this dashboard right from within the browser window. I won't bother showing that now. It's literally the same exact type of functionality you see in the desktop, minus a few things for the most part. But those are the different options that I have there. There's a data details panel, which will show if I have some information. Looks like our system is a little behind today. There is lineage information that would show up here. I must have caught the system in the middle of kind of updating. Let's see here. We've got the ability to refresh data. I can go, and here's where things are grouped. They've changed the interface, actually, for those of you that are familiar with Tableau. This is the latest version, 2022. And you see here, I've got the ability to set subscriptions. Here's where I come in and I subscribe users. I could put in a user group. I could specify what they can and can't see and what frequency they're going to get this on a schedule. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave it at that. So let me just pause for a second. We've got a couple minutes left here. Just wanted to see if there were any questions. Any questions? You can either type them into the chat, or if you want to come off mute, you can go ahead and ask.
Craig, this is Dennis. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Back at the very beginning of the presentation, you talked about the two different ways that you can connect to a data source, whether it's live or via an extract. And we've seen, I've played with some things and seen some weird things happening even when the connection is live, that it doesn't seem to refresh the data. You know, you can and I'm working in particular here with an Excel spreadsheet. So you've got an Excel spreadsheet, you've got the data source set up as a live connection, and you create some visualization. Then you go into the spreadsheet, you change some data, you save it, and then the visualization doesn't refresh and doesn't show the current data. Are there any little tricks to that, as to what else would need to be done to make that what should be a live connection truly a live connection?
Yeah. So there is something that could be in your Tableau server environment, and I have to check with the admins. Which agency are you in, by the way?
This is actually not even I'm with DHHS, but not
Okay.
even not even with the data source on server, but even a data source on a local machine where the spreadsheet's on a local machine, right where the visualization is.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. One thing that this is the most common issue that I see, and it's kind of a it's kind of a it's kind of a pain, honestly. But what happens is when you open up a workbook, especially if it's a packaged workbook that has an extract, what it's going to do when it opens up that workbook is it's going to immediately take a copy of your extract and put it into a temp folder. And so it's actually working from a temp folder. You can actually keep upgrading and refreshing, and nothing's going to happen until you repoint your data source against the actual Excel file. Because what's happening is it keeps pulling data from that temp folder. I understand the process of why we did it. It really kind of confuses people because they're like, why, if I edit the connection and you see it's pointing to a temp folder somewhere that you never intended it to, I bet you that's the issue. Um, just check that. And if that's still not the
Yeah,
issue,
I'll
then
check that.
yeah, check that for sure. That's usually the problem. But anyway, yeah.
So you reconnect the data source?
Yeah, what you do is you go here, let me show you in what it looks like in desktop. So back in the desktop here, and this won't actually do it because I'm not using an extract, but right here under listings, you say edit connection.
Right.
Actually, yeah, see this? You see this where it says app data local temp one, Tableau temp, geospatial demos. So it's actually put this file here, and if I save this as a packaged workbook and I close it, I come back tomorrow and I reopen it, it's actually going to dump that file into this directory and use it until I repoint it back. And again, I could get into long discussions about, well, why the heck do we do that? Well, it has to do with protecting the data so that stuff doesn't get overwritten, right? When you're doing analysis and possibly you have the potential to overwrite it. That's the only explanation I can give. But just check that out. Just make sure, like now I would have to go back and say, oh, that's not my original data set. I need to come back to my product, demos, geospatial demo. There it is. There's my real file. And then when I connect to that, you should see, and then you refresh. Like, let me open it. Now, if I go to this little refresh button here, I will get the actual new data from that Excel spreadsheet. Okay.
Well, as easy as that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody, I apologize. I have to run to an 11 o'clock call, but just to wrap things up here, I'm happy to further answer any questions that you have. Maybe direct them to Kim, or let me go back to the first slide here that has my contact information on it. So right here, this is me, cbartel@tableau.com. Go ahead and form any questions. If we need to do a WebEx to tackle your question, if you've got any just general questions, period, about, can I do this with the product? If you need a demo, whatever it is, just let us know, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you. Okay? All right, with that, I am going to sign off. Everybody have a great day, and hope you get a chance to use Tableau.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Craig.
Craig.
Thanks, everybody.